Welcome to From Head to Heart and Home. We're excited to have you listen in on our conversation. We are a channel for women created by women to take intentional action. And we just love to share with you each week all the exciting tidbits we have to share. So this week, we're going to talk about releasing limiting beliefs, which Shanda and I both know how important that is, not only for our clients, but for ourselves. So we're excited to have a conversation about it, give you tips, tricks, and what it means to you. And I'm going to let Shanda start off.
Yeah. As you guys hopefully know by now, Carla and I are always doing the things that we're sharing with you. We're on the journey with you. So it's an honor to be able to bring these pieces and offer them to you as a tool or a resource for you to use as well on your healing journey. And so we were talking about before we press record the type of work that we've both been kind of journeying with and playing with, and it's to do around releasing limiting beliefs. And we were like, well, hang on, before we get into this conversation, let's press record because this is going to go so many beautiful places. So the importance of releasing your limiting beliefs is because in order for us to move forward, we need to be able and willing to let go of the things that are currently anchoring us down. So I can't remember who said it, and you guys might know this already. I'm horrible with names, so I do apologize, but I'm going to paraphrase what I heard. And it was around the lines of there's this thought where we have to fill up our cup, which is totally true when it comes to self-care and that sort of thing and self-love. Now, if we have a full cup when we come into our healing journey, that's a big uh-oh, okay? Because we need to be willing to start over or start fresh in order to take on new information. Because if we come into a training or we come into a course or trying a new modality with preconceived notions and ideas, we're then coming from a very limited scope and a limited view. So I like to say to my new clients, I'm like, empty out your cup, forget everything you know for now, so that we can go through this process completely clean with a clean slate. Okay. So it's similar when it comes to your limiting beliefs. We need to empty everything out, shake it all out, tip the cup upside down, get everything out on the table, the good and the bad, quote unquote, right? And then fill it back up with the things that are going to serve us, with the things that are going to help us move forward, and releasing and letting go of the things that will not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
I was having a visual while you were talking about um like say your clothes don't fit right anymore and your
Mm.
closet is totally full. You're not able to you don't have any room for anything new
I know
anymore.
nothing about that.
Right. And and as you go through and are like, okay, this one really still fits me, and this no longer fits me. This does not fit where I want to go,
Mm.
and going through piece by piece and looking at them, because otherwise you're full up with all these things that aren't quite you anymore
Right.
and not where you want to be. And you're like, I don't even know where to go because I have
Mm.
all of this and it's not working.
Yep. Okay. So the things that got you to where you are will not be the things that will get you to where you want to go. Again, I heard that somewhere. I can't remember where it was. I'm so sorry, people. But what got you here will not get you to where you want to go. And it's funny, Carla, that you're talking about closets and clothes and trying on stuff because I spent my weekend, part of my weekend last weekend doing that. And I don't think I told you about that, which is funny.
Right.
Because something interesting happened to me. I am still shedding excess weight from some changes that I have been making over the last 2 years and still lovingly dropping all of this excess weight. And so I went through my clothes because I always do what I call summarizing and winterizing my closet so that I don't have everything out and there's not really enough space to be able to do that anyway. So I summarize and I winterize my closet. So I was bringing out my summer stuff and I was trying everything on because we do live in a tiny home. So we're constantly downsizing, which is what we want to do. We're so happy and excited to be living this lifestyle. But it does take that. It requires a constant paying attention to. So, anyways, I was trying on clothing and I came across this dress that I have loved since the first moment I found it in the store.
Mhm.
It's a beautiful Calvin Klein one piece dress. It's just so good and it always looked so nice. It felt comfortable. It was this beautiful material and I loved this thing so much. And I tried it on and I was amazed. I was like, oh my gosh, I felt like a kid in my mom's clothes. Like it just floated on me. And for a
Mhm.
brief moment, I was like, oh no, this doesn't fit me anymore. And I got all like ugh, about it, right? And then immediately I was like, no, 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 no. Hang on a second. Let's upgrade this mindset right here, right now. And I was like, how freaking awesome is it that my favorite dress doesn't fit me anymore? Now I get to give it away to somebody else who's going to love it just as much or more than I did. And then it's an opportunity to go find a new favorite dress and that fits me the way it's supposed to, that complements my body, that reminds me of the upgrades that I'm continuously committed to doing and creating in my life.
Right.
So I just thought it was such a powerful example of like our mindset, how our mindset could trip us up. Because I used to be that person who hung on to the old clothes just in case. And guess what happened? I yo-yoed like you wouldn't believe in my weight. I would lose a bunch of weight and then I would gain it all back. And I would lose a bunch of weight. So I had like two separate wardrobes. I had one for when I was healthy and trimmed down, and I had one for when I wasn't. But I didn't release either one of them. And it wasn't until I was like, I don't need these bigger clothes anymore. I'm done. I'm not going back there. I'm making that decision and I'm declaring it. And since then, I have not needed them and I've only continued to lose weight. So,
Right. Right. That reminds me one time you and I did a commitment together and I lost 20
yes.
pounds. And the first thing you said to me is like, Carla, get rid of the clothes.
Yes.
Get rid of the clothes so that you don't have them to be comfortable enough to get back into. And
Right.
it's the same with our beliefs because say we're chugging along and we're doing pretty good and we have not released those limiting beliefs and maybe we step past them, but they're still there hanging in the background.
Yeah.
And they are our comfort zone, as we talk about all the time.
Mm.
They are our comfort zone. This is where we believe we're supposed to be at, even if we
Right.
want so much more.
Right.
But it's like a snuggly old shirt, you know?
Definitely. Totally. But, and the thing that I think is the most powerful thing about this all that I don't think we realize because we don't think about it is when we hang, and I know we're talking about clothing, but like we're also talking about the mindset, right? Because we can shift this to beliefs too. But let's go back to the example of the clothing because it's a lot more understandable and tangible to actually grasp. When we hold on to the clothing that doesn't fit us anymore, because of whatever reason, what is the subconscious message or subliminal message we're sending? What are we telling ourselves? It's okay if we put on weight again because we have access to these clothes. Or sometimes it's, I don't want to get rid of these clothes because they costed me a lot of money. That's scarcity. That also won't help you move forward. So pay attention. Like I always say that the words we speak say a lot about our mindset, and it's so true. And the thoughts we think do the same thing. So start to pay attention to your thoughts, right? Get rid of the things like Carla was saying that don't serve you. I used to do a training around clutter and it was called clearing out the clutter. And it addressed the different stages and the different states of clutter. We don't just have physical clutter in our environment. That is definitely one. But just like so above, so below, so within, so without, right? When we have clutter around us in our physical environment, it's because we have clutter internally, whether it's mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. And we need to release those things. Just like we purge sometimes or have a yard sale or donate stuff, we get to do that. We get to release the limiting beliefs that aren't holding us, or sorry, that are holding us back and not supporting us to move forward, right? And it's a choice. And it's something that you get to do from a place of love and a place of thank you, like gratitude. Thank you so much for getting me to where I am today, right? Like Carla and I just did something, and I did mine this morning where I wrote down a bunch of limiting beliefs because yes, we still have limiting beliefs too.
Right.
We're human. It's normal. So I just purged everything out on a piece of paper, talking about clearing the clutter of the mind. I got everything out on a piece of paper. It took me 2 or 3 days. I took my time with it. And then I did a little sacred ceremony, a little ritual this morning, and I burnt it. And but I gave gratitude for those limiting beliefs and those limiters to getting me to where I am today. I had gratitude. I said, thank you for getting me here, and you're no longer needed. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Right. So it's not just about like, I don't need that stuff anymore. I just want to move forward and trying to blow past it. We need to lovingly accept and have that gratitude and hold that space for the past versions of ourselves as well.
Right. Beautiful. And Shanda told me what she was doing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to do that too because I got really sick. Like I'm
Yeah.
stepping past some limiting beliefs and I got sick and I'm like, maybe I just really more than anything, I've tried everything with this illness. Maybe I need a release. And
Mm,
so I did similarly what Shanda did. Like I wrote down a page full of stuff and then I slept better than I've slept in 2 weeks
mm,
and woke up feeling better. And I'm like, that's what it was. And if you notice stuff will come into your life, like Shanda was just telling me to tell me not to ask me to do something,
yeah.
just sharing what she is doing. And we do that. Like
Mm,
that's part of our friendship. And do I sometimes do stuff or her do stuff that the other's doing? No, we don't always, but sometimes we're like, aha, this is the perfect timing. This came to me through her for a reason
mm,
because it's time to release some stuff because we are human. And I help clients release limiting beliefs. That's what one of the things we do, the big things we do. And I know I have them, but I forget stuff happens when I step through mine that I can be like, oh, I feel horrible. That's how
mm,
mine manifests. And it's time to clear out my closet of stuff. And I've done that. Like if you look around your house, like Shanda was talking about, and stuff is really cluttered, I'll bet you if you look at your mindset, there's a lot of clutter in there that you can release. And sometimes it takes starting out with the outward physical stuff to make
yeah.
you feel free enough to do the inward decluttering.
Hmm.
And it's such a beautiful, freeing thing to do. And
Yeah.
then you're like, I feel so much better. I had no idea it would feel this way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually interesting that you're saying that because that's how my journey had started. It started with my physical clothing, right? And reorganizing my closet and doing all that. And it feels so good. Like I got rid of a garbage bag full of clothes that we donate. We're always donating stuff and it feels so good. And then I'm always learning and upgrading as well. So I was doing a course, and I'm still doing a course, and the mental side, the limiting belief side popped up, and I was like, oh wow, how perfect is this, right? Which is why I shared it with you, Carla. And
Mhm.
um, it's this is something that you cannot overdo, right? Especially when you're on the cusp of something new, of doing something new you're going to have you're going to be flooded with limiting beliefs, right? It's your brain trying to keep you safe. It's your brain trying to keep you in the normal, in the certainty of what it knows already. It's normal. And it's an opportunity to release and let all that go. So, like Carl and I just said, we just finished ours, but I might do it again tomorrow, the next day, or next week. And it's fine. You can't overdo this because this stuff is never one and done, right? And so there's a term that I'm going to offer that you guys could go look up, and it's called energetic shedding. And what you do I mean, to simplify it, you can think of like, again, I think it's funny because we're really talking about clothes, but it's like taking off a layer, okay? So energetic shedding is asking yourself the question, what about you is no longer you, right? So these could be limiting beliefs that were instilled into you from family, from society, from school, from whatever. They could be limiting beliefs that you made up because something happened, you made meaning of it, and that's what happened. It created a root. But ask yourself the question simply, what about me isn't me anymore? because we're always shifting and growing. That's why I'm like, you can't do this enough. There's not too much of this to do. So if you're like, let's just say, well, I'll use my example. I'm growing my business, right? And when we do stuff like that, again, our brain tries to keep us safe. And so I'm having a lot of limiting beliefs come up, and I purged them all, right? And so if they show back up again in a couple days' time, I can do the whole process over again. And it doesn't take that long, right? They might, like, if I would have kept that list that I created, which was a page and a half of like, I just rambled and rambled and rambled, I could barely read it. If I would have kept that and redo it later on, all of them probably wouldn't come back, but there would be some. So hopefully the idea is the list would get shorter and shorter and shorter, right? And the other part that I want to add to this is that when we release, we also, so if we're emptying out our cup, you don't just leave the cup empty, because if you do, what happens is unintentionally it will fill back up. Just think of like, I'm thinking of like going to a beach when we make like a little with sand, we make like a little breakwater is what I'll call it, or a dam, and we get all the water out of a certain area by building up like a wall. And then all of a sudden a wave comes in and it fills it all back up again. And you're like, oh crap, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what will happen. So we need to intentionally plug back in what we want to be there, what we're choosing to be there.
Right. And people miss that a lot because they're like, okay, I shed all of this, but there's absolutely the possibility to refill it up with what.
Yeah.
And so our ritual did, even though we probably did it differently because we didn't completely talk about the end how we did it, we both had intention of what we were filling that space with.
Mm.
Um, just like with my clients, after I help them shed a certain thing when we go in, we refill it with something else. I don't leave holes to be
No.
filled up with other things. And so like we can do a big general limiting belief thing, but you can also be like, I don't know what I want to fill it up with. Well, then start with something that you intentionally have limiting beliefs around that you want to release and what you know you want to fill it with. So
Mm.
if you're like, I know what these are, but I don't know what I want to fill it with, then pare it down to like, okay, this is what I know I want, and these are the limiting beliefs that are attached to it.
Yeah. And another option could be, because like okay, often we don't know what we want, or we don't allow ourselves to access that information, but
Mhm.
we darn well know what we don't want. So that's always my shortcut to figuring out what we want. I'm like, okay, you might not, sure. All right, I'll buy into I don't know what I want. Okay, let's bypass that by asking, what do you no longer want? What do you not want? And they're like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And the list, they could ramble it out in like seconds, right? So you take that and you just flip it. If you don't want to feel scarcity, well, what do you want? What is the opposite of that? Okay, well, it's abundance. Oh, there, we figured out one,
Right.
right? And then if you're like, well, abundance doesn't quite feel where I'm at, or I don't feel like it's quite believable yet, fine. You can scale that back and work up to that. Do you know what I mean? You can tweak it and play with it, but it's a good starting point, I think. Yeah.
Right. And to be like, okay, if I'm not going to believe this, it is perfectly fine to find a spot that you are willing to believe that is the opposite of your limiting belief, no matter how small it is. Give yourself grace always.
Yes.
Always give yourself grace
Yes.
because it is, I tell my clients, it is such a huge deal that you're willing to do the work.
Yeah.
No matter how small you have to break it down into, it is much more impactful to step forward than to just sit there and have all of the reasons why you don't even want to stick a toe out.
Yeah. I love that you're saying that, because I celebrate a lot with my clients. It's how we start every session, is in celebration, focusing on what's going well. And even though this is a ritual that we do, oftentimes, I get some clients that come and they're like, I don't know. I had a whole bunch of things I wanted to share with you, and now in this moment, I can't think of anything to celebrate. And I'm like, how about that you're here, that you're doing the work? How about you showed up, right? That's enough. That's worth celebrating. Like Carla said, that's huge. So I'm constantly acknowledging people for showing up to my trainings, whether they're paid or free, for being on my email list and receiving the content, for working with me one-on-one. I praise you. I acknowledge you, right? Like, good job for doing this work. It means so much that you want to up level your life and yourself, because that ripples out into the world, that ripples out into the lives around you. Like, don't underestimate the power and the impact that you have, right? Think of this. Let's strip the world down for a second, and because everything is energy and energy is everything. Let's literally look at the world. Every single thing is just this vibrating, we'll say like a ball, a vibrating ball, everything. So like, look out there for a minute and just see a bunch of balls vibrating, different colors all over the place, right? If you change your ball from a negative magnetism, like a negative, what am I thinking? A negative negative and positive attraction, right? If you
Yes.
shift your ball from being negative into being positive or even less negative, right? You're already helping, because energy affects energy, right? And it ripples out around you. So think of the work that you do, no matter how subtle or insignificant or small it might feel at times, it yields an impact. It creates a ripple out. So don't ever underestimate the things that you do both ways, actually, because it works the other way too, right? When
Right.
we get in those poo poo pants and we get stuck in that poo poo mood, that ripples out too.
Yeah, that's an awareness to have. Like, look at what you're attracting. Have an
Mm,
awareness of what you're attracting based on that. Like, okay, I've shifted more positive. What has come into my life? Because that reinforces your willingness to do it again,
yeah.
right? The learning to be aware. And then when you are in those poo-poo moods, you're like, and you, if you're aware, you're like, ooh, this
Mm.
is what comes to me when I'm in this space, when I have this energy.
Yeah, this is what comes to me. This is what I attract. And
Mhm.
this is how I feel. You'll start to notice how poo poo it actually feels, as opposed to being unaware. We're so disconnected. We're so in the emotion, right? That we're not even aware of the toll it's having on our body.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we're so in the reactive
Yeah.
mode. And so that's the beauty of awareness about those kinds of things. And to notice, okay, I've after you've done the exercise like we just talked about where you release some limiting beliefs, um, to notice how things have shifted because those are the things that are reinforcing, not hanging on to the few that are still there, but like Shanda said, realizing how much smaller those beliefs are and like, okay, this is some very positive movement forward
Mm.
and I can do it again and create even more change and impact in my life towards what I want.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm telling you guys, like when Carla says she wasn't feeling good as she was sick, she was. Her voice was a mess. She did not feel good. She was just down and out. And so even seeing her today from yesterday, I didn't see her yesterday, but we were talking. I'm like, wow, like you are totally normal. You look totally normal, like you always do, right? Like you don't even sound like you were sick, which is amazing. So again, don't underestimate these subtle tools, these simple tools, these free tools. These are some of the things that can create the most powerful impact in your life. For example, Carla went from feeling totally down and out in bed, sick, to not by releasing, right? Everything is energy. Energy is everything. So when we can clean up our energy, it has an effect on our health, on our well-being. So within, so without.
Yeah, exactly. And I, guys, I was coughing so bad
Oh
and I
yeah.
had a hard time breathing and my voice was changed. And I decided, I mean, she said that and I was like, that's what I get to do. Like how we always say inspired action, like all of a sudden I got this, ooh, I get to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And look at it. And I've been sick um pretty consistently for 2 weeks and it had gotten really bad
Yep.
in the last week. And this thing that Shanda was just sharing with me made an impact on my life because I was like, my gut said do it. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to listen. And I did similar to what she did. I just let myself write it out. Like, um, and I'm expanding my business as well. I'm like, okay, so that's going to be my focus. What are all the things that this is bringing up that I'm not being conscious of? And when you free write, like we free write,
Oh yeah.
you would be shocked at the stuff that
Oh,
comes out. You'd be like, I
oh
had
yeah.
no idea I thought that,
Yeah.
And so I did it off and on all day yesterday between naps and tea and all that stuff. And I was like, I came up with a page and a half too. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I didn't know all of that was sitting in there.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay, I'm going to release this and I'm going to, I was, I mean, even after the first chunk of it, I'm like, why do I feel better?
Hmm. Yeah.
I'm like, I know the impact of stuff because I've worked a lot with the subconscious and health. And I'm like, wow, just writing it all down, even before I did the release, which I did right before I went to bed last night, it was making such an impact on how I felt in
Hmm.
the moment and the flow in my life because the energy that we have stored in those limiting beliefs, it so makes you so restricted.
Hmm.
Even with your body healing itself, it's so restrictive
Yeah.
because your body wants to express all this stuff that's in there.
Hmm.
And so the release made me feel 10 times better. I, I had a hard time sleeping because I had so much energy from doing the release right before I went to bed. I'm like, no, I wanted this energy earlier yesterday, but it didn't come. And here I am, and I have so much more energy today than I've had in probably a month.
Yeah. I think I mean for people like who are going to set out to do this, I think understanding like after you just dump, like brain dump or and free write, just doing that one action, you're going to feel lighter immediately. Like you will literally feel like sometimes I feel taller, which is hilarious. I feel like taller, like I'm
Right.
less compressed. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I wrote down as you were sharing, because it's a very important tip. So thank you. Do not edit the thoughts and the beliefs. It doesn't matter. Sometimes it won't even be your voice. It'll be a parent or a sibling or a coworker or an old boss or an ex-friend or anything. Sometimes you're like, I don't even know where that came from. I've, I don't even keep writing. Like, and so what I did in the past, I used to do like a bullet point, and that did work. And this time I was like, I want to try something different. And I don't even know why. I just listened to my intuition. I intuitively did it this way. Instead of doing them bullet point, I wrote it like I was writing a letter, but each limiting belief had a period. So each one was like a sentence, right? Even if it was like 2, 3 words, period. Next one, period, period, period. And so I got to fill up the page, like jammed it all in there, right? And so, like Carla and I both shared, we revisited it. So I didn't just sit down in one session. I was like, okay, I feel like I got it all out for now, but I know there's still more in there. So I put it aside. And then when I start working on my stuff and then, oh, I'm hearing things, they're coming in, and I would write them down. Right. So importance, please do not edit anything. You, like Carla was saying, you might be like, what the heck? Where did that come from? I didn't know that was in there. Bingo. That's what we want. We want to access the things that we didn't even know were lurking and lingering and buried, right? Bring it all up.
Right. Because there are some of them that we're very aware of. We're very aware of, like, when we started in leadership, I knew that I hid and I was very quiet and in the background, and like I didn't want to interrupt people and I didn't want to be perceived as rude or
Mhm.
whatever. I knew all of that, but there is so much more underneath that than underneath the stuff that we are daily consciously aware of, you
Yeah.
know, because maybe people told us we were shy or whatever, and that, by the way, can be something that somebody told you and you believe it when it's not necessarily true. It's just somebody said that to you at a point where something caused an emotional reaction where you felt the need to withdraw. The fight or flight came in, somebody called you shy, and you're like, okay, they're right, I am. But really, it's you didn't
Mm.
feel safe.
Mm. Yeah, 100%. I can relate to that through and through. So the traumas that normally have affected me growing up and through my life happened when I was really young. And I was that kid who hid behind my mom. I was glued to the back of her leg, hiding always. It's like, and if anybody from my family, would tell you a story, it'd be the same thing, like how shy I was. I wouldn't even talk to my cousins, my aunts and uncle. Like I was so shy because that's what everybody told me. My mom, my parents would answer for me, right? So I lost my voice in that. I didn't answer questions anymore. They would answer for me. And it's interesting because sometimes I catch myself answering for my son. Somebody will, and he's 9, and somebody will ask him a question and I'll answer it. And I'm like, oh, wait, hang on. Sorry. Let me get Ember to answer the question, right? Because I'm taking away his power by answering for him, and I want him to use his voice and stand in that power, right? So it's
Right.
interesting how these can show up in so many different ways, right?
Right. And so that's when you're taking a look at your limiting beliefs, remember that they did serve you, which is why we thank them for serving us. At
Right.
some point, it served you. So somewhere along the line, Shanda and I had our voices taken, right? And it served us. It served us in some form. So letting go of it, you have to say, thank you. You no longer serve me. This is where I want to be.
Yeah.
And be grateful for them. Because they did. And in some point, like we've talked about many times, the subconscious mind just wants to keep you safe.
Yeah.
Safe is the known, where
Right.
you're at now.
Yeah.
Um, and I've told you guys many times, it's 90+%. There's all kinds of different study, 90+% of all of the stimulus that comes in through your 5 senses are dumped out because they don't fit
Hmm.
the framework that your limiting beliefs are in the subconscious mind. So they served you to keep you safe, which is the known. You know what, your routine, you know what, or you believe you know what the outcome is. Like if we do a certain thing, this is how people will react. That's our belief. The stories that we talk about often, we create a story. And so if you pull that out and say, hey, I don't necessarily know how people are going to react to my action, let me step out and be open to something new. I'm going to get rid of that belief that I know exactly how everybody's going to respond to me.
Hmm. Yeah, it's reminding me of a piece of training that I took through my certification. And it's how you were talking about like the 5 senses and how we take in information. And I mean, I think we've talked about this. This is a long time ago that we talked about this, but there's the typical car accident scenario or accident scenario, and they ask the bystanders what they saw, and they'll ask, like, let's just say it's 6 or 8 different people, and every single person has a almost completely different story because we took it in completely different. Our perspective, our perception is different. And it's because we skew information, we filter information. We do 3 things: we delete, we distort, and we generalize. We do those 3 things. And that is what creates our perception of what we're witnessing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And if you think about like when somebody films a movie, they edit out the pieces to put it together to create the story. And that's what our brain does in the moment, instantly creates this movie. And then we're like, that's why you can have, I was raised, there's your truth, my truth, and what really happened.
Right.
So I've always known that. And it is because it's all based on our perspective, and everybody can have a perspective. There can be a room full of people and somebody says one thing and all these people can create even a different sentence because
Yep.
they hear it totally different
Yep.
because of their perception of what's going on.
And that's all based on their experience, their past experiences, by the way,
Right.
which generally come from in between the ages of like conception or birth and age 6. So I've shared this before, and I think it's mind blowing to know that, which is so funny because my partner and I talk about something which I'll share in a second often because it's funny, but we live our lives as our, at best, our 6-year-old self. So my partner and I often joke about, could you imagine if adults acted like children? So we say this sometimes when it's funny, like when my son's like making fart noises or like running around with a pair of underwear on his head or whatever, right? We're like, could you imagine if we like adults did that? Funny. And then we say it also when maybe he's having a moment and he's acting whatever, like he doesn't throw tantrums or anything, but if a child was throwing a tantrum type deal, right? Like, could you imagine if we threw tantrums? And so, yeah, so we are living our lives really through the lens of a 6-year-old at best, if we don't do the work and upgrade and do the healing, right? To bring us up to date with who we are today, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And if anybody goes, conception, what do you mean? I have had clients when we do a session do go back to, there can be arguments that their parents had and they were in
Mhm.
utero and
Yeah.
it is in their subconscious mind. There is a lot of stuff. And so think about, say it was just stuff that happened when you're 6, and we'll talk about the closet again. And you're stepping into the closet trying to put on the clothes that you wore as a 6-year-old. It
Hmm.
doesn't fit you anymore. It is not something that you want to wear out, right?
No.
It's not what you want as you step into the life that you have always dreamed of having. And so that's why we say shed, because you're like, that doesn't fit me anymore. Yeah, it
Hmm.
did at one point, and there's reasons for it. And if I want to go in and find out, there's absolutely a way to do deeper work, but if I don't, I can just say, this doesn't fit me anymore. It fit me at some time. I don't even need to know why, but I just need to know I don't want it.
Yeah.
I want to let go of it and shed it and move forward with something that fits me now, that is what I want my future to be like, what I want my now to look like.
Hmm. Yeah. And thank you for sharing the why factor, because so there are times when the why question is super supportive. Like when we're looking at our future, why do we want the future we want? Super supportive. But there are times when the why question will actually stop us, block us, and create this like hurdle or block. Like we'll get stuck in trying to figure out why we don't want XYZ. It's like sometimes the why doesn't matter, right? It's like releasing the why so that you can move forward, like Carla was saying. Yeah, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Right. And just know, if we get stuck in the why, then we're also, we can pull ourselves into victim mode, and that doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve us anything. It's just pulling us one more thing to keep us in the limiting beliefs.
Right. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
And do you have anything else you want to share?
I honestly feel like we've given a lot of beautiful information, and I feel like this is a good place to pause and really encourage the listeners to take the process that we offered and go through that process and pull out those limiting beliefs without editing them down and start the releasing process and the replenishing process. Right. I think that I feel complete. I feel like this was a really great conversation.
I completely agree. And the beauty of just sharing that we've been there, and really what this can do in your life. I love that we gave examples even from personal.
Yeah.
And I love that you guys listen in and you allow us to share not only our journey and our clients, but how these things can make an impact on your life. And we appreciate you. If you think somebody would benefit from this, absolutely share. If you haven't subscribed, just down below, hit the subscriptions. And every week, we feel so blessed to have you listen in on our conversation.
Mhm.
We will see you next week. Bye-bye for now.